Benedict Cumberbatch really does not like to be called sir. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today, the Best Picture nominee that we're talking about is The Power of the Dog. Power of the Dog is the newest Western by Jane Campion about a rancher who does not take too kindly to his brother marrying a lonely widow. It stars Benedict Cumberbatch, Jesse Plemons, Kirsten Dunst, and Cody Smit-Mcphee. So one of the obvious highs, just you can tell by looking at it, is the cinematography. It is beautiful. Like the lighting and the shadows, especially. I mean, any classic Western that you've seen, this definitely takes inspiration from it. You know, silhouettes, these dark shadows in the corner versus really bright lights in a room, stuff like that. It was just, I mean, everything, especially making it feel like it was all natural lighting. The cinematography was just beautiful, you know, as well as the shot types and everything. But that's so obvious. I actually want to focus on the story a little bit more. The story is told in parts, specifically 5 parts, kind of like any Tarantino movie, or if you saw Yorgos Lanthimos' The Favorite. It kind of has that play feel where it feels like every single part is divided to focus on something specific in depth until it gets to the final part and everything kind of culminates. And I thought that that was a really interesting way to go with this one, considering it is a very character based, a very character driven story, and it's very simple. You know, there's nothing too complex about it. It really is just about a brother who marries a widow, and then the other brother, this big rancher who thinks that he's the man's man, just messing with them because of that, because he is an asshole. So the story is very simple, but the fact that it is told in parts, it really focuses on the relationships between different people in each of those parts, the kind of different combinations that pushes the story along. And the tone throughout is so quiet. It's kind of like Logan or Fargo, where it has music here and there. It's not quite like No Country for Old Men, where there's no music, but it's very quiet. It is very heavy. It just feels like every single scene is very tense. And that is majorly in part to Benedict Cumberbatch. He was amazing in this. I've never seen him play, I think, a straight up asshole like he did in this. Like every time he's on screen, you're like, okay, trouble's coming. Something's gonna go down because all he does is stir up trouble and make people feel like complete shit. But he also has a lot of depth to him that we find out later as well about him that he doesn't want people to know about. And the relationships that he has with all the other people in this movie make it vastly more interesting. I mean, it's kind of the point of the movie, but it makes it so interesting because you see how he interacts with everybody and we get to know him more through all of those interactions. The other characters as well were awesome. I mean, there's really only 4 main characters in this, and we have Benedict Cumberbatch. Jesse Plemons plays basically the exact opposite of Benedict Cumberbatch's character. Well, I thought honestly that there was going to be like this George and Lenny thing from Of Mice and Men going on, and I would be able to be confident in saying that they took a lot of inspiration from that because Benedict Cumberbatch is a very angry, short, not short, but like he's a very short with people guy. Meanwhile, Jesse Plemons is he's a lot simpler. He's quieter. He's very nice. It's not that he's dumb or anything by any means. He's just quieter. He takes things slower. And so he played a really great character with that as well because he was just kind of the foil, I think, to Benedict Cumberbatch. And then Kirsten Dunst, she did an excellent job playing a widow who is obviously struggling, like emotionally and otherwise, and she is just at the end of her rope, but she's really trying to make the best of this. She did a really good job with that. It had been a while since I've seen her in really anything, and especially I think anything where I took her this seriously. And then Cody Smit-McPhee, he actually blew me away. This is the same kid from Let Me In with Chloe Grace Moretz, and he was also, I think, in the X-Men prequels. I think he played, I forget the name, but he's the one who's like kind of snake-like and he like poofs everywhere, and he's blue. They're all blue. But he was really good. He plays this kid who is gay and is targeted by Benedict Cumberbatch for that. And especially because they're living on a ranch where you're supposed to be a man's man. And so he played a really subtly creepy character, not in a way of like creepy to us, but like he's thinking about a lot of stuff all the time. And you're not really sure what it is, but you know that like something's going to happen soon. You know, something's going to come to a head because Benedict Cumberbatch is being an asshole to everybody, including Smit-Mcphee's mom. So he's gonna do something about it. You just don't know what. And that's what I think was the best part about this movie, honestly, besides the tone, was the subtlety. There are so many scenes, pretty much almost every scene, in which nothing is said outright, but you know exactly what's going on. You know exactly what each character feels about the other. It was a great exercise in being able to show characters doing stuff to each other and not telling it. I mean, obviously there are certain scenes like later on when people start to like really just have a breakdown and they're like Benedict Cumberbatch finally screams to Jesse Plemons' character, "Wake the hell up," you know, so stuff like that. They finally do come out, but for a lot of the movie, it is very subtle. There's a lot going on underneath. So that kind of leads into my middle element, which is the biggest thing that people are going to be bothered by about this movie is that there is so much tension built up throughout the whole thing. And then you know something's coming at the end that's going to break all this tension. Something's going to happen. And it does, but it's very subtle. It just kind of happens. There's no real big thing. There's a scene before what happens where it feels like things are starting to come to a head, and it's like, all right, people are going to scream and people are going to, you know, yell and fight. That's probably the most you're ever going to get like a tension release, because there is a conclusion. It wraps everything up, but it doesn't feel like you're like, it's like, and so like you leave the movie feeling like I still have all this tension built up, you know? So it's kind of bothersome for sure. But I do think that it works for this movie because the whole thing was about it being super subtle and character driven and little things happening. And honestly, it's a very haunting ending, what happens. It just sucks that it's like you can't have that release of tension, but again, it does work for what the movie was trying to do. And it's not like anything comes out of the blue either. Everything is very well set up very subtly, again, throughout the movie. My only big low, and it's not a huge low, but they start out with, obviously Benedict Cumberbatch is the main character, and they start out with Jesse Plemons being sort of the next main character. And again, this is a movie where characters move around and each part is focused on a different person or a different combination of people. But it bothered me a little bit that like Jesse Plemons was such a big character and they focused on him a lot in the beginning, and then he kind of just goes away for a long time. And then he comes back and still doesn't even do that much. It really gets focused later on Cody Smit-McPhee's character. And so like while I get it, it just felt really weird that we're like focusing super heavily on Jesse Plemons' character, and then nothing really happens with him later on. I mean, again, it makes sense, but it just kind of bothered me that he just doesn't do anything later on, like at all. And you know, he definitely, in terms of plot, could have been somebody who mitigated stuff. I mean, you know, plot wise, character wise, I see how he wouldn't be. Again, so this might almost be a middle, but it just bothered me so much that he just didn't ever really do anything after focusing so much on his character. But again, it's not that big of a low, so it doesn't really take away that much from the movie because you do shift into other combinations of characters, which are really interesting. So overall, Power of the Dog was another tense, stress-filled, quiet Western. We haven't gotten really one of those in a while. And it was a very character-driven movie, which it was really interesting to see because you just never know who's going to do what or how far they're going to go. It was a movie that really made you think. You know, I definitely think it's one of the front runners for Best Picture for sure. I can see why, because it was a very enveloping movie. Once you're in it, you know, you're in it till the end. And again, it really sucks that they don't have that tension release at the end, but it's definitely on purpose, and you know it's different. It makes you feel a type of way for sure. I'm going to give The Power of the Dog a 3.5 out of 4. And because of how much it says in subtext without actually saying it, it gets the Iceberg Award. Guys, what do you think of The Power of the Dog? Do you think that Benedict Cumberbatch should win? Do you think Jesse Plemons should win? Do you think Cody Smit-McPhee should win? Kirsten Dunst? Everybody, I think, is nominated for this. And most importantly, do you think it should win for Best Picture? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and movies right in the middle. I'll see you guys later.